I'm Paul Finch, Programme Director of the World Architecture Festival, and I'm talking today to Michael Seum, who's Vice President of Design at GROHE, the founder sponsor of World Architecture Festival from 2008. Now, as you know, the conference theme of this year's festival is performance considered from many different angles: aesthetic, technical, environmental. And I'd like to ask you, Michael, when it comes to your world, the world of designing products, both for specification and for purchase, of course, by the public, how do you think in general about this question of performance? Is there any priority for you when you come to, say, design or renew one of your lines?
Performance, I mean, it can mean a lot of different things. At the end of the day, I think the product has to perform for the end user. And I think that's one of the most important aspects of performance. And I think we have such a wide variety of products. So whether it's a shower, whether it's a bathroom tap, each of them have different criteria that we build into the design process for performance. So it may be something around sustainability or water savings and how do we change behaviors, yet still drive in performance cues with technologies. Or so performance is it's part of our DNA, actually. I mean, we want to drive products that make a meaningful difference in lives, and we try to mix design cues that drive a certain level of performance aspects. And what I mean by that is, one of our shower systems, for example, we have this ability to adjust flow. And in order to drive this performance cue, we used really precision knurling texture, right? But behind that tactile feel is a valve technology that enables that. So these cues help to drive this performance, aspect to the consumer. They see this in the product, and they can see that, okay, I can change my water volume and my intensity, and drop this down to get a different performance level as I'm in different modes of showering. So
I think that's an interesting example because it raises the question, which is applicable to many companies, but I think GROHE is a very good example of a company which begins with kind of engineering performance, if I could put it like that. In other words, the stuff works.
Right.
But then, let's say, the more human element, all the non-performance of how the water gets from there to there and at what pressure and at what temperature, all the non-performance things, in a sense, are where you guys come in, because you've got to satisfy the desire for different sort of performances on the part of those users. The fact that the grip of the thing kind of works ergonomically for them, and the fact that it looks, everything actually from the packaging to the thing itself, look kind of consistent, and they've got a consistent level of quality. And GROHE over the years has paid more and more attention to that sort of total design aspect, which must be very satisfying for you as the chief designer.
It is, and in fact, I mean, what I've been talking about both internally and externally in this shift for design is that we have to go beyond product. You know, consumers are now looking at companies to deliver full experiences, whether it's that moment you engage, that first moment in a retail store and how you engage the customer, whether it's in one of our showrooms, to the moment the installer has such a pleasurable experience installing this. I mean, we have to think about the total experience. And I think this is the big shift in the design world. And I think it's very similar in the architecture world. You have to think about the experience of a person living in this space and how that changes. And we're going to that level. And I think that's the exciting trajectory for designers. It's a much deeper level of understanding consumers across the whole value chain for companies.
Now, I think an interesting question at this festival is whether you see great differences between the way that you're designing for a public that's buying for installation in their own home, as opposed to the specification market where people are making decisions on behalf of others. Do you see much difference between the way architects approach and assess what you're doing to the way that ordinary buyers do?
That's a tough question. in principle, I think consumers are consumers. Whether it's, you know, whether it's somebody buying it for another customer at the end of the day, we have to, the end result of what we produce has to be designed for the end user in mind, right? Now, I think what I do a lot in part of my role is connecting with the people that are specifying for some of these end users. So it adds another dimension into our process, which actually for me gains a lot of insights, because if I understand the way an architect thinks about a building, they think about transition of spaces. Sometimes as GROHE, we get a little bit, you know, we think about our product and our product only, and in reality, it's part of a whole interconnected system. You know, the moment somebody uses a bathroom, it's no longer a functional place. It's an experiential place. It's and I think having these dialogues with architects, they understand this as well. They're trying to develop spaces where people can disconnect from all of the technology, all of the trouble we have in our lives with constant meetings and energy. And bathrooms and kitchens are highly emotional places now, and they're personal places. And this is where, if we think about this with not only the specifiers, but the end consumer and our role, we end up with better solutions by having multiple dialogues.
And the interesting thing, of course, is that architects are themselves consumers in their own homes. And I suppose that in that sense, the world of bathrooms and kitchens is quite unlike the other things that go into buildings, which architects won't necessarily experience. I mean, they might in terms of the office studio, but that sort of experiential space actually is quite an interesting example of where the specifier gets to kind of test personally, if they wish,
Absolutely.
In their own surroundings.
Absolutely, and I think that's an exciting part. Is we're all experts in this space because we have to use these products on a daily basis. So what we can do is just understand the end user, but then also interject what are the needs of, how can we make the specifier or the architect's life more easy to use these products. And that goes into the details like working for simple installation and making, when they pay a little bit more for the quality of a GROHE product, they know that we've invested in the quality behind the wall, that, you know, you won't hear the noise in a hospitality where you hear the next room. You know, they know that the quality we put into the product is going to perform, and I think that's the extra level of thinking that we bring into the process.
I suppose a related question, which is one of unending interest to architects, is the relationship between form and function. Now, of course, some people deny there's any relationship at all. Some people say that form swallows function, and that actually function in the sort of functionist tradition was so narrowly designed or so narrowly conceived that it wasn't really a useful way of looking at the world. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, just looking historically at the area you work in, of course, things like, you know, taps, faucets, showers, always were, there always was form as well as function. And I wonder, looking back, whether you think, you know, crosshead taps, good idea, bad idea, ancient idea, whether you see a sort of almost an evolutionary Darwinian line between old form and the sort of very different forms that you're producing today.
Yeah, I think if you asked designers this question from different fields, you would get a lot of different answers. So it's a very like controversial, maybe never-ending subject. I actually think you know, form follow function does come into play, and it doesn't come into play. Like, there's no, to me, it's an and. But what we try to inject in GROHE is identifying the problem creates the solution. So I think this is the shift. When we talk about going from product design, where styling is driven by maybe the functional need, is we're starting to develop products that solve real problems. So water safety, for example. Nobody wants to lose their personal mementos to a leak, right? And we're in a day and age where we have technologies that can solve that problem, right? So we've developed products that identify really a consumer need, and come up with a solution that is really responding to that original need. I think this is the better analogy for how we approach products at GROHE, is that the consumer problems, identify the solution, and whether that could be true with sustainability as well, right? Bottled water. You know, I mean, if you watch a woman come home with groceries and they're carrying up 4 flights of stairs, 8 liters of bottled water, and then you look at the implications to the environment, we can solve this problem by collectively. But that's not a form follows function problem. It's a much higher level problem. These are the ones that are interesting to me, and I think this is where design going beyond product. It needs to get to this next level, and this is where we're going to take GROHE with that sense.
And that's interesting because there are 2 sorts of problems, aren't there? There are problems which are the result of given conditions or constraints.
Yes.
So I suppose in the world of water, it's just a given. In a sense, it's not a problem. It's a condition that water wants to escape all the time, right, under pressure, right, and as it were, if water had a mind, it would just want to submerge everything. Exactly. So that's a given that you deal with. But then there are constraints which might be regulatory or fiscal that you've got to cope with. But then the other thing, and whether it's a problem or not, I don't know, is identifying consumer desire. And I suppose that sometimes there's a desire not to have a leak. But then, if that's the right phrase to use, but then
I think everybody would want that.
There are also desires that have higher standards, or to be able to do more, which is the really creative challenge for you guys.
Yeah, I think, but I think the desire is what fuels the next round of products, right? And so this level of enhanced performance, what can we do with new technologies, what problems can we solve? But I'll go back to something around the regulatory, right? So this is kind of the for instance, in the US, there really work water flow, right? Which in the end, I'm not sure it actually changes consumer behavior, because what happens? If you can't rinse with the right amount of flow, you take a longer shower. And this is where, for example, we can start to look at what is the real problem. The real problem is we need to conserve water. We need to be more thoughtful with water usage. Is the first answer the government's regulatory approach to this? Maybe not. I think because we can come up with ways in the future to really reuse water, there's definite ways to do this. And I think this is where design comes in to really look at what's the consumer behavior, what technologies do we have available. And I think this is the exciting aspect of design.
Yeah, because you guys are actually looking at the way people actually shower and doing the research. Meant that you could adapt your products to reality, right, which meant that actually people could rinse off far faster because the shower was far more efficient directionally. Right. Are there other examples that you're allowed to talk about of things that you're looking at the moment of that sort, where you're kind of reanalyzing what the real problem is in respect of future development?
Well, I think we're doing a lot in kitchen around the kitchen faucet, for example, has been largely for washing and performance, but I think we're focused a lot on beverage and water solutions as well in that space, and I think you'll see a lot more innovation in that space around water consumption, water tracking, more beverage type of solutions. Maybe it's even dosing of water for baking, for consumption. So I think there's a lot of interesting technologies. And then I think you're going to see the expanded portfolio of digital solutions. We can do so much with smart home technology. Water is inherently analog, but it can be controlled in a digital way that we can really drive some unique experiences, where if you have a certain profile coming back from the gym, it recognizes you and you have an automatic setting. This is the next generation of technology, I think, for consumers. And homes are headed this way, right? We are all in this IoT, Internet of Things world, where I think that's quite exciting for us. And we're pioneering it now with water safety, but I think you can see it expanding. I think you will see probably an expansion of health and wellness trends. through some of our products as well, possibly through what we're doing in toilets. I think there's a lot of possibilities for understanding what the potential of data coming from the bodily fluids and how we use that. I mean, that's something that's happening in the industry in general, but it's a rich source for driving health and wellness. We're all wearing wearables that tell us how many steps we've taken. This is a very interesting behavior.
There's an interesting relationship between physics and chemistry in this world, isn't there? Because the physics of sensor technology, which responds to movement or temperature, then is allied. If it's going to start analysing your bodily fluids, and all of a sudden there's a chemical element to this. And I guess it's digital technology which makes that combination, that transition possible.
I think so. I mean, sensors. I mean, it's a big discussion in the field right now, and I think it's a big discussion in the smart home, in smarter cities, what we can do with sensors. I had an opportunity to visit Somerset House, and they did an exhibition where they were measuring the effects of air pollution in different parts of the city on a bicycle. And I think we're just in this world where, you know, sensors are driving data that can help to solve a real particular problem, and I think this is going to be a real part of our daily lives in the future. I think we're going to have much smarter technologies that, you know, that enable us to live higher quality lives. This is really exciting to me.
And of course, one of the implications of this is that the sort of research you do and the designs which emerge as a result of that, of course, have an effect on the users themselves. I mean, this is an each-way thing, isn't it? You gather data and you do your research about how people behave, you respond to that, but actually the response is almost certain to result in modification. It might mean that you shower for 10 seconds less because it's a more efficient, you know, system, or it's exactly the right temperature the moment you step into it, so you don't run it for half a minute, etc., etc. I mean, this is a kind of this is the observer having an effect on the observed, and I'm wondering whether actually you do research on how people may have modified their behaviour or what they do as a result of the new technologies that you introduce.
Sure, I mean, we do. It's very hard to do that for shower solutions because most people don't want to be researched in those situations. But I think as we're all end users within the team when we develop these products, I think we understand how powerful that changing the behaviors and changing the experiences can be a positive thing. I'll give you one example. Because I travel so often, I think you know, I step into hotel showers and half of them I don't understand even how to use them. I mean, this is to me is unbelievable that we still have this problem, right? And I turn it on and one water sprays up. You know, it's really, and I think if I have this problem, I know everyone else does, right? This is why we've developed really intuitive, precise controls where you push a button, you get a signal, you know exactly where the water. I mean, it seems so simple that we have to solve this problem today, but it's a huge problem in this industry. So it's general usability improvements are a big step in this industry, but I think we're going way beyond with some of the advanced technologies that can really drive water savings, that change the relationship we have with this precious resource, right?
Well, it's of course an irony that the proliferation and the popularity of design itself can do two simultaneous things. One is it can lead to the proliferation of different systems. Yeah. So hence you never know how the shower's going to work in that hotel context. But simultaneously, of course, it's moving towards things being the same because people are aware of all these technologies and there's an element of copying and borrowing and so on and so forth. And I wonder whether you think that in the end, that those sort of universal experiences, especially in the bathroom, will lead to more homogeneity in the world of product design, or whether actually, because we can sort of design anything and do anything, it's going to be chaotic.
I think it's more likely to be chaotic because I think what's happening now is also the way we manufacture products are changing, right? And some companies will adapt faster to 3D printing technologies and personalization. And I think we're getting into a world where things will be less harmonious across this industry and more unique. It may be defined exactly for the user. So I'm optimistic that new manufacturing technologies, new technologies in the product will create more diverse experiences. But they still, at least for our brand, they still have to be simple. They have to be human. They have to be intuitive to use. They have to follow the ethos of the brand. And I think this is up to us as a design team to make sure that people can understand how they use these products properly, and that they work for the architecture community, they work for the end user, however it be.
I've got a final question, which is about visual performance, because I don't think there's any designer who would find any object satisfactory unless it was kind of clicking with them at a visual level. That looks great. And my question is, do you ever see things where you think something looks beautifully designed and is visually appealing and is an aesthetic triumph, which turns out not to work? Because my view is rather like, if you're looking at architectural drawings, the integrity and the quality comes off the page, and you kind of know that building will work as well as look good. I wonder if that applies in the world of product design, or whether you have the disaster of the absolutely beautiful thing which is absolutely useless.
That happens all the time, I think, in the design industry. Has it happened personally to me? Yeah, probably. But I've also had a fortunate career where I've designed some what I would call more of a philosophy of design permanence, especially in the kitchen and bath industry. When the average consumer over the lifetime renovates their bathroom twice in their life, they put great care into the products that they select, and I think we aim for a sense of permanence, knowing that when they select this, that in 10 years from now, that they will be just as happy when they've selected that particular product that they will using it 10 years later. And I think that's a challenge in this industry that's quite unique. I think if you look at consumer electronics world, it's a completely different situation because of the consumption cycles that we have. So I think it just depends on what type of product you're working on. I think it is hard for a designer to step out of their personal style preferences, but this is why we focus on the consumer. We really have to take our preferences and focus it on the end user, and I think we have to project how they will live their life, how this, and we work with style segmentations. We have some segments that are focused on the brand, so we're not trying to be everything to anybody, to everybody. We're trying to really focus on meeting the needs of a very particular market, whether it's contemporary styles, cosmopolitan styles, and then looking at the end user to design. But I think every designer has probably had some level of failure. There's no possibility, but there's others that have had huge levels of success. I've been fortunate, as is the GROHE design team, to have great long-standing designs on the market.
Michael Seum, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's been a pleasure.